There is a moment when silence becomes louder than any argument. It begins when you stop explaining yourself. It deepens when you no longer rush to be understood. Most people believe silence is weakness. In truth, silence removes access. When you stop reacting, defending, or justifying, something unsettling happens in the other person's mind. They are left alone with their expectations, their insecurities, and their need for control. Without your response, their sense of influence begins to fracture. Stoic philosophy understood this centuries ago. You are not disturbed by events, but by the judgment you attach to them. When you withdraw that judgment, you also withdraw their power over you. This is not about manipulation or revenge. This is about self-mastery. Today you will recognize the quiet signals that appear when your calm presence begins dismantling someone's ego. They may never confront you. They may never admit it. But internally, they feel the shift. And once you see these signs clearly, you will never mistake silence for weakness again. 1. When they suddenly try to pull your attention back. They reappear when you least expect it. They reach out without a real reason. They act casual, as if nothing ever changed. They test the door to see if it is still open. The moment you stop reacting, attention becomes scarce. For someone whose ego depends on being noticed, that absence feels disturbing. They were used to your replies, your explanations, your emotional presence. When that disappears, a quiet panic begins to form. This is why they return indirectly. A short message that means nothing, a reaction to something you posted days ago, a question passed through someone else. These actions are not connection, they are probes. Attention is not just politeness, it is leverage. Whoever can pull your attention on demand holds influence over your inner state. When you stop giving it freely, that influence weakens. Stoic philosophy never encouraged chasing closure or clarity. It taught restraint and self-command. You reclaim power not by confronting someone, but by refusing to be pulled emotionally. Silence, when intentional, resets the balance. Many people break at this point. They respond quickly to avoid appearing rude. They explain themselves to keep the peace. They justify their distance to reduce guilt. But explanation feeds the very ego you stepped away from. It reassures them that they still matter enough to move you. It tells them their presence still creates pressure inside you, and that restores the old hierarchy. Silence works differently. It introduces uncertainty. They begin to wonder why their presence no longer carries weight. That uncertainty eats at the ego far more than rejection ever could. You do not need to ignore them harshly. You do not need to perform detachment. You simply maintain your pace. You answer only when necessary, not when summoned. This calm consistency creates imbalance. They sense a shift they cannot explain. They feel less relevant, less central, less powerful. And the ego reacts strongly to that feeling. Stoic calm is not a weapon. It is a filter. It reveals who relied on control rather than mutual respect. It shows who needed your reactions more than your presence. When someone keeps pulling for your attention without substance, it is not curiosity. It is resistance to losing access. They are not reaching out to reconnect. They are reaching out to reassert influence. The more grounded you remain, the louder the silence becomes. Not because you are doing anything to them, but because you stopped supplying what their ego depended on. Silence does not confront the ego. It starves it. And when the ego no longer receives fuel, it begins to collapse quietly. That is why they feel it. 2. When they start provoking you in subtle ways, they begin to test you quietly. Their words sound harmless on the surface, but their tone carries just enough tension to trigger you. They watch closely to see if you react. When attention alone no longer works, ego shifts strategy. Instead of pulling you back gently, it tries to disturb your calm. Provocation is not about winning an argument, it is about restoring emotional access. You may hear comments disguised as jokes. You may notice small digs followed by laughter. You may feel a familiar urge to explain yourself again. That urge is exactly what they are trying to activate. Ego cannot tolerate being ignored. It needs proof that it still matters. Subtle provocation is a way to confirm relevance without direct confrontation. If you react even slightly, the ego feels reassured. Stoic philosophy warned against this trap. You are not required to respond to every stimulus. Not every comment deserves clarification. Restraint is not avoidance, it is discipline. The difficult part is emotional reflex. Your mind wants to correct misunderstandings. Your pride wants to defend your position. Your habits push you to engage, but engagement is what restores the old dynamic. Silence, when maintained calmly, interrupts the pattern. The provocation lands but finds no reaction. There is no argument to escalate, no emotion to feed on. This creates inner friction for the other person. They expected resistance or explanation. Instead, they encounter neutrality. Neutrality feels like rejection to an insecure ego. You do not need to appear superior. You do not need to expose their behavior. You simply stay steady. Your lack of reaction becomes the message. Over time, the provocations increase or collapse. Some people push harder, hoping to break your composure. Others retreat, confused by the absence of feedback. Both responses confirm the same truth. Stoic calm removes the reward from provocation. Without reward, behavior loses purpose. Ego does not grow in silence, it weakens. This is why subtle attacks feel more aggressive when ignored. They were meant to draw you closer emotionally. Instead, they create distance. Distance exposes dependence. When someone keeps provoking without clarity or honesty, it is not communication, it is control disguised as humor or concern. Your silence strips away that disguise. It forces their intention into the open. The power here is quiet. You are not dominating the situation, you are stepping out of it. And ego cannot function without opposition. Silence does not escalate conflict. It dissolves it by removing fuel. And when provocation no longer works, ego begins to feel cornered. That discomfort is not your responsibility, it is the cost of losing control. 3. When they start talking about you indirectly, they stop addressing you directly, they mention you through other people, they reshape the story without your presence, they speak where you are not. When ego can no longer pull you into direct interaction, it looks for a different stage. If it cannot control the conversation with you, it tries to control the narrative about you. This shift is subtle but deliberate. It signals discomfort with losing influence. You may notice others repeating phrases that did not come from you. You may hear softened criticism disguised as concern. You may sense your name floating in conversations you never joined. This is not a coincidence. The ego needs witnesses. It cannot exist in isolation. When you withdraw, it recruits others to reflect its version of reality. Indirect talk becomes a substitute for lost engagement. Stoic philosophy warned against chasing reputation. What others say is outside your control. What you do consistently is not. Calm action speaks louder than borrowed words. The impulse to correct the story can be strong. You want to clarify. You want to defend your intent. You want to restore accuracy. But correction pulls you back into the arena. It grants the story importance. It confirms that their words still reach you, and that restores ego leverage. Silence changes the equation. Without reaction, the story has no momentum. It circulates briefly, then weakens. Most narratives collapse without resistance. This frustrates the ego deeply. It expects friction. It expects denial or explanation. Instead, it meets indifference. Indifference is not ignorance. It is restraint. It signals that your identity does not depend on external validation. That realization unsettles those who rely on it. Stoic calm does not chase perception. It trusts time. Consistency reveals truth without words. Behavior corrects stories more effectively than arguments. You may notice the indirect talk escalating, details become exaggerated, tone becomes sharper. This is the ego attempting to regain relevance. But each escalation reveals insecurity. Each added layer exposes dependence on attention. The louder the story becomes, the clearer the motive behind it. Your task is simple but demanding. Do not engage, do not counter-narrate, do not recruit allies. You remain steady. You let your actions remain visible and unchanged. Those who observe long enough will notice the difference. Truth requires no defense when behavior stays aligned. The ego cannot tolerate being ignored publicly and privately. Indirect talk is its compromise. It speaks because it cannot touch you anymore. That distance is felt. Silence does not erase rumors instantly. It removes their power over you, and without power, they fade on their own. They may never admit it, but losing control of the story feels like losing control of you. And that loss is deeply unsettling. That is why they feel it. For when they become hot and cold around you, their behavior starts to shift unpredictably. One moment they are warm, the next moment they feel distant. Nothing feels consistent anymore. This fluctuation is not random. It signals internal imbalance. When ego loses control, it experiments with emotional pressure. Hot and cold behavior is an attempt to regain leverage. Warmth is used to pull you closer. Distance is used to create doubt. Both are emotional tools. Neither represents genuine connection. You may notice sudden friendliness after a period of silence. You may also notice abrupt withdrawal without explanation. These swings are designed to disturb your stability. They test whether your emotions can still be influenced. Stoic philosophy teaches observation over reaction. Emotions shift quickly. Patterns reveal truth. When behavior oscillates repeatedly, it points to insecurity. The common mistake is self-questioning. You start wondering what you did wrong. You replay conversations. You search for meaning in their mood. That mental effort hands control back to them. It places your emotional state in their hands. Ego thrives when others adjust themselves around it. Stoic discipline refuses that adjustment. Your task is not to decode their mood. Your task is to remain consistent. Consistency creates contrast. Contrast exposes manipulation. When you respond the same way regardless of their temperature, the strategy collapses. Warmth no longer pulls you in. Coldness no longer unsettles you. They lose both tools at once. This creates frustration. They feel unseen. They feel ineffective. They feel emotionally powerless. Ego does not handle neutrality well. It prefers resistance or submission. Stability offers neither. That absence creates discomfort. You do not need to confront the behavior. You do not need to ask for explanations. You do not need to seek clarity. Your steadiness is the boundary. Stoic calm is not emotional shutdown. It is emotional independence. You choose your internal state deliberately. You do not borrow it from others. Over time, one of two things happens. The behavior fades when it no longer works, or it intensifies briefly before collapsing. Both outcomes confirm the same truth. The ego is relying on emotional control. When that control disappears, instability surfaces. What looks like moodiness is actually exposure. The mask slips when influence is lost. Silence does not create this imbalance. It reveals it. Your calm presence acts like a mirror. It shows them what they cannot regulate. They may never acknowledge the shift. They may never explain their behavior, but internally they feel the loss of control. And that loss is deeply unsettling. That is why they feel it. 5. When they try to reassert superiority, they suddenly start talking about their achievements. They compare themselves to you indirectly. They offer advice you did not ask for. They frame dominance as concern. When ego feels threatened, it looks for elevation. Superiority becomes a shield against insecurity. Instead of addressing the loss of control, they try to rise above it. This behavior is not confidence, it is compensation. You may notice subtle bragging entering the conversation. Accomplishments appear where they do not belong. Opinions are delivered as judgments. All of it is meant to reposition them above you. Stoic philosophy draws a clear line here. True confidence does not need an audience. Strength does not announce itself. Only insecurity demands comparison. The moment you engage in proving yourself, the dynamic shifts back. You validate the hierarchy they are trying to restore. You confirm that their position still matters to you. Ego regains footing through your response. Silence interrupts this attempt completely. When you do not compete, there is no contest. When you do not explain, there is no standard to measure against. Their superiority has nowhere to land. This creates internal conflict. They expected resistance. They expected justification. Instead, they face irrelevance. Irrelevance is one of the most serious threats to the ego. It removes the stage. Without an audience, performance loses meaning. Power dissolves when no one reacts. You do not need to diminish them. You do not need to highlight your own value. You remain aligned with your principles. Your self-worth stays internal. Stoic discipline teaches self-reference. You measure yourself by virtue, not comparison. You assess progress privately, not publicly. That independence destabilizes external dominance games. As they continue asserting superiority, the contrast becomes obvious. Their need to rise exposes their fear of falling. Their words grow louder as your presence stays quiet. The imbalance becomes visible to anyone paying attention. Some people double down. They escalate status displays. They push harder for recognition. Others withdraw when the effort fails. Both responses reveal the same truth. They were not seeking connection. They were seeking control. And control cannot survive without compliance. Stoic calm does not challenge dominance directly. It makes dominance unnecessary. It removes the emotional reward that hierarchy depends on. And without reward, the behavior fades. They may never admit why their behavior changed. They may label your silence as distance or indifference, but internally, they feel the shift clearly. They sense that you are no longer playing the same game. And once you leave the game, superiority loses meaning. Ego has nothing left to stand on. That loss is quiet, but deeply felt. 6. When your calm begins to irritate them. They grow tense as you remain relaxed. They raise their voice while yours stays steady. They become restless as you stay composed. Your calm starts to bother them. Calm is threatening to an ego that relies on emotional reactions. When you do not mirror their intensity, they feel exposed. Your steadiness removes their ability to escalate the situation. Without escalation, their control weakens. You may notice irritation where none existed before. Small things suddenly annoy them. Your silence feels heavier to them than any argument. It reflects a contrast they cannot ignore. Stoic philosophy views calm as strength, not passivity. To remain unmoved is to remain in control. You choose your inner state deliberately. That choice limits external influence. Ego expects emotional participation. It expects engagement, defense, or resistance. When it receives none, frustration builds internally. Many people misinterpret this moment. They assume calm should soothe the situation. Instead, it unsettles the other person because calm signals independence. Independence removes leverage. If you are not emotionally dependent on their behavior, they lose relevance. That loss feels personal to the ego. It triggers irritation rather than reflection. You do not need to respond to their frustration. You do not need to explain your tone. You do not need to adjust your energy. Consistency is your anchor. The more stable you remain, the clearer the imbalance becomes. They appear reactive. You appear grounded. The contrast speaks louder than words. Stoic discipline is quiet resistance. It does not provoke. It does not submit. It simply holds position. Over time, their irritation intensifies or fades. Some push harder, hoping to break your composure. Others retreat, uncomfortable with the mirror you provide. Both responses confirm the same inner conflict. Ego cannot dominate what it cannot disturb. If it cannot move you emotionally, it loses influence. Calm becomes an immovable boundary, a boundary that requires no explanation. This is not emotional suppression, it is emotional mastery. You are present without being reactive, engaged without being controlled. They may accuse you of being distant, they may label you as cold. These labels are attempts to provoke reaction. They seek to restore engagement through discomfort. You do not need to correct these perceptions. Your behavior already communicates clarity. You are not withdrawn, you are centered. Silence combined with calm is powerful. It removes chaos from the exchange. Without chaos, ego struggles to operate. Its influence fades quietly. They may never understand why your calm unsettles them, but they feel the shift clearly. They sense the loss of control. And that loss is deeply uncomfortable. That is why they feel it. 7. When they cannot stop watching you, they stop reaching out directly. They stop asking questions, but they never fully leave. They observe from a distance. This happens when ego realizes it has lost access, but not attachment. They no longer feel entitled to your attention, yet they cannot let go of it. Distance replaces interaction. Observation replaces influence. You may notice their presence without contact. They view what you share but remain silent. They gather information indirectly. They know details they never asked you for. This behavior is not curiosity. It is unresolved dependency. Ego struggles to detach from what once fed it. Watching becomes a substitute for control. Stoic philosophy describes this as attachment without authority. They are no longer part of your inner world, yet they remain oriented toward it. That imbalance creates tension. At this stage, many people make a subtle mistake. They check back. They look for signs of interest. They monitor the watcher. This restores the loop. Attention begins flowing both ways again. Distance collapses. Ego begins to feel rewarded. Stoic discipline requires one final act of restraint. You do not observe the observer. You do not track their interest. You remain oriented toward your own life. Detachment is not disappearance. You do not hide. You do not perform indifference. You simply live without reference to them. This is deeply unsettling for the ego. It is forced to watch without impact. It sees movement without influence. It witnesses progress without permission. Watching without access creates helplessness. Helplessness threatens ego identity. If they can no longer affect you, they are pushed to confront themselves. Most egos resist that confrontation. You may sense tension during this phase, a feeling of being observed, a strange awareness of attention without engagement. That sensation is real, but it does not require response. It requires grounding. Your stability strips their attention of meaning. Meaning is what ego seeks. Stoic calm at this stage becomes final. There is nothing left to explain, nothing left to clarify, nothing left to defend. They may attempt indirect re-entry, a comment through someone else, a coincidence that feels intentional, a subtle reminder of their presence. These are not honest efforts to reconnect. They are last attempts to confirm relevance. Relevance is ego's final demand. When you do not respond, something shifts permanently. They feel the full weight of separation, not dramatic separation, quiet separation. Quiet separation is harder to process. There is no conflict to resolve, no closure to negotiate, only absence. Absence forces reflection. Reflection exposes dependence. Dependence wounds ego pride. That wound is felt internally. Stoic philosophy never framed this as victory over others. It framed it as freedom from disturbance. You are no longer oriented around reaction, you are oriented around principle. This is the end of the cycle. Attention was removed, provocation failed, narratives collapsed, emotional swings lost power, superiority attempts dissolved, irritation surfaced and faded. Watching became the last thread, and when even watching no longer connects them to you, ego must let go. Not gracefully, not consciously, but inevitably. You do not celebrate this. You do not announce it. You simply move forward. Your life continues without reference. Stoic strength is quiet continuity. It does not require acknowledgement. It does not seek validation. It stands on its own. They may never tell you what they felt. They may never admit what they lost. But internally, they understand something changed, something they cannot recover. They felt your silence. They felt your calm. They felt your withdrawal of access. And they felt what followed, not punishment, not revenge, but consequence. That is why they feel it. Silence was never meant to be loud, yet it changes everything, not because it dominates, but because it withdraws permission. Throughout this process, one pattern remained clear. You never had to confront, explain, or overpower anyone. All you did was stop reacting, and that alone reshaped the entire dynamic. Ego survives on access, access to your attention, access to your emotions, access to your energy. When that access is removed, ego does not vanish immediately. It resists, it tests, it adapts, it pulls for attention, it provokes, it rewrites stories, it shifts moods, it tries to rise above you, it becomes irritated by your calm, and finally, it watches from a distance. None of these reactions happened because you became aggressive. They happened because you became unavailable to manipulation. Your silence did not attack anyone. It simply stopped feeding something unhealthy. Stoic philosophy never promised control over others. It promised control over yourself, and that is the only form of control that lasts. When you choose calm over reaction, you reclaim inner authority. You stop negotiating your worth through explanations. You stop outsourcing your peace to other people's behavior. You become grounded in something unshakable. This is where many misunderstand Stoicism. They think it is emotional distance. In reality, it is emotional independence. You still feel fully, but you are no longer ruled by impulse. Silence in this sense is not avoidance. It is discernment. It is knowing when engagement would cost more than it gives. It is choosing dignity over drama. Some people will never understand this shift. They will call it coldness. They will label it indifference. These labels are defenses, not truths. What they are really reacting to is loss of control, loss of influence, loss of relevance. And that loss is deeply uncomfortable. But discomfort in others is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is alignment. Alignment with your values. Alignment with your principles. Stoic strength does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It does not require applause. It stands quietly, whether noticed or not. When you stop reacting, life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. You see who respects boundaries. You see who depended on access. And that clarity is freedom. Freedom from emotional games. Freedom from endless explanations. Freedom from being pulled into dynamics you never chose. Silence did not change who you are. It revealed who you already were. Calm. Grounded. And once you understand this, you cannot unsee it. You move differently. You speak less, but with intention. You act from principle, not impulse. That is the quiet power of Stoicism. Not domination, not revenge, but self-mastery. And that is why your silence is felt so deeply.